John McCain is apparently very angry about Obama's foreign policy, so he wrote a letter to Defense Secretary Ash Carter, whose name I always giggle at because I always think of Ashton Kutcher when I read it. I don't know why. So listen to what he said here. As a young military officer, I bore witness to the failed policy of gradual escalation that ultimately led to our nation's defeat in the Vietnam War. Now, as chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, I fear this administration's grudging incrementalism in the war against the Islamic State risks another slow, grinding failure for our nation. He continues here, my conversations with military commanders both on the ground and in the Pentagon have led me to the disturbing yet unavoidable conclusion that they have been reduced from considering what it will take to win to what they will be allowed to do by this administration, and it will be the men and women serving in our military and our national security that will pay the price. This is unacceptable. Okay, so his argument is, damn, the war against ISIS really is starting to look like Vietnam. That's point number one. Point number two is, therefore, we should escalate it. If there was ever a wrong conclusion drawn from a proper premise, is the war against ISIS or just U.S. wars in the Middle East? Have they turned into Vietnam? Fuck yeah, they have. Is the answer to do a deeper ground invasion and send in hundreds of thousands of troops? No. How can you possibly come to that conclusion? That's been the problem all along. And therein lies the massive contradiction that is John McCain. Every once in a while, John McCain says something that's spot on. Where he was tortured, so he knows how fucked up torture is, and he knows that nations who torture, on that issue, they become the bad guy. You're the bad guy if you torture. So he's been strongly against torture from the beginning. Great, he's right on that. But then randomly, he's in favor of invading every single fucking... he's never met an intervention he doesn't love, so he's a jackass on that front. And here, he's right on the first point. On the second point, his conclusion is dead wrong. The whole point of Vietnam and the disaster it was is that we stayed there way longer than we should have. Well, we shouldn't have gone in the first place, but that's a separate conversation. But after realizing that it was an unwinnable situation, we stayed there, and we increased troops more, and we increased troops more. And he's saying that's so much like Vietnam that we should make the exact same mistake we made in Vietnam and escalate further. I can't, man. I don't get these people. Something's missing up there. Is it all the money they get from the military-industrial complex? Are they doing the bidding of their donors? Are they doing the window dressing in their own mind, where they think, I know I'm being a good person, but hey, my agenda just happens to line up with the defense contractors. I don't know what it is, but I know that he's dead wrong. Look at what we've done in the Middle East. For fuck's sake, we did the war in Iraq, which had nothing to do with 9/11. Saddam had nothing to do with it. Toppled Saddam Hussein, and then you created this power vacuum. The power vacuum was filled by ISIS. ISIS was previously Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Al-Qaeda in Iraq didn't even exist before we invaded. After we invaded, Al-Qaeda in Iraq came in. So we created the vacuum. ISIS rises up out of the vacuum. We stay there. Never mind the additional intervention that we did in Afghanistan. Even after we defeated Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, we stayed there. Look at the bombing we're doing in Pakistan and Yemen and Somalia. Now we're doing bombing missions all the time in Syria. We have at least 3,000 advisors, troops on the ground in the Middle East in various places. And all this time, you would think that, okay, so if these interventions worked, what would have happened? We would have fewer terrorists today than we did before the war on terror. Well, the reality is the opposite happened. After we did all these interventions, today there's more terrorists than there were before the war on terror. So this is just like the drug war. The idea is, let's crack down on drugs and do this drug war, and then, hey, lo and behold, we'll make it so nobody's doing drugs anymore. I'm not kidding. There are some people who were orchestrators of the drug war, that we're going to eliminate drug use. Not only is it not eliminated, you didn't even reduce it. The opposite happened. Now there's more drug use. So you flushed $1 trillion down the toilet. People literally died on the border because it's a war, a drug war, and more people are doing drugs. It's an abject failure in every sense of the word. It's the same thing with the war on terror. And then John McCain says, man, this is really starting to look like Vietnam. Okay, so your takeaway should be we need to get out. No. This is looking like Vietnam. We should put more people in. That's the mistake of Vietnam. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Now, don't get me wrong. Does somebody have to fight ISIS? Yes. They're not just going to go away. So, perhaps the Kurds can continue fighting them. Shia militias can continue fighting them. I have no problem backing up the Kurds when they do that. I have no problem giving humanitarian aid to civilians in the region. I have no, as long as you go through the proper legal channels and do the right thing and do it with the international community, I have no problem with use of special forces, for example. But when you say we're going to remain, we're going to put in more troops, we're going to occupy, you're only going to inflame tensions, you're only going to make it worse, you're only going to help ISIS in their recruiting message, and I'm against that! I want to defeat them in a smart way, in a rational way, and I don't want our people to die in the process, and I don't want to waste trillions of dollars in the process. John McCain, whether or not he realizes it, is pushing us more and more in that wrong direction.